And then a third god was born by Old Man Han, narrated by Agent Happy Potato. Something's wrong. It's dropped into the negatives. Energy from target H approaching. What the? It's detecting mass? Mass? Not a spiritual body, but a physical one? Cancel the experiment. Destroy the gate and push target H back. The gate won't close. It's being forced open from the other side. This target H, it's not Heinrich's spirit. What on earth? What's going on? What the hell have we summoned? Where am I? I consumed Elias, and her holy power is in my body. But I was defeated by the hero, and just as my life was about to end. This isn't Heinrich. What is... No, that's impossible. Now, finally, the holy and dark are mixing within me. No, this is the power of chaos. The primordial power that existed before even time and space. In the very beginning, there was chaos. Chaos divided it into light and darkness. From the light came the goddess, from the dark came the dark goddess. Each was born with divinity, and power was divided amongst them. But I hold the power that originally should have been... This world shall now be my delightful toy box. Now, what shall I play? Black Alice. Series: Monster Girl Quest, Paradox RPG. Millions of years ago, there were two gods born into existence as the primordial element of chaos, split into its two respective halves, holy and dark energies. Goddess Elias, the holy goddess of light, and dark god Alephes, the dark god and the very first monster lord, known among her subjects as Alice the First. These two gods, unable to communicate due to the incompatible nature of those two founding elements, wandered the universe until they both came across Earth, a planet home to primitive life. Goddess Elias, unable to interact meaningfully with the animals below, and only able to create her own angels, could do little more than nudge evolution in the direction of her own image, giving creation to humanity. Alephes, on the other hand, was capable of creating her own stable life in the form of the monsters, who required the aid of Elias's humans to reproduce and survive. Giving creation to the six monsters, who required the aid of Elias's humans to reproduce and survive. Giving creation to the six ancestors, the original progenitors of each species of monster, Alephes found herself watched from above by Goddess Elias, who has grown jealous of Alice's ability to create with such ease. Declaring that the monsters were horrific and parasitic beings, Goddess Elias waged war against Alephes in the Great Monster Wars. Despite the monster forces overpowering Elias's angelic army, Alephes began to notice as the destructive war tore their world apart, causing untold damage to the planet and its inhabitants. Elias, on the other hand, would not yield, determined to win the war even if it cost them everything. Deciding that she would rather let Elias live on than destroy the planet she has learned to love, Alephes began to hesitate on her conquest, and the goddess of light took notice, promising that she would leave the monsters alone if Alephes would allow herself to be sealed away for all of eternity. Goddess Elias created the six ancestors' great seal to lock away the six ancestors and dark god Alephes, who begrudgingly seceded, lest the world they had grown to love was extinguished. Before Alaphys was sealed, she created a successor in the name of Alaphys II, an extremely powerful monster that could rule over the rest in her stead. The creation of Alaphys II marked the beginning of a long-lasting, lofty lineage of monster lords, each lord able to rule as they please. Some persisted coexistence between monster and man, some were indifferent, and some were outright hostile, believing that the more powerful monsters had the right to rule humanity as well. Among these monster lords was Alaphys VIII, the dreaded and almighty Black Alice. Reigning 500 years ago, Black Alice was unpopular even among monsters for her extremely brutal, sadistic, cruel, and warmongering ways. Despite appearing childish and unassuming, Black Alice was easily the strongest monster lord of all time, and quickly presented herself as a problem on her journey to rule the world. It was with great effort that the legendary hero Heinrich struck Black Alice down, and although he did not kill her, she disappeared mysteriously after her defeat. In reality, Goddess Elias saved Black Alice, keeping her in hiding for her own future schemes. Come the present day, during the progressive reign of Alice XVI, and the beginning of hero Lucca's quest toward coexistence, Goddess Elias has slowly grown tired with the antics of humanity. Believing their faith to be waning and her own power to be incomplete, Elias set the stage for her revolution with the hiring of 3 generals to command her siege of the surface: Seraphim Eden of the angels, Promestine of the seekers of truth, and a preserved Black Alice of the monsters, her position to turn as many monster queens as possible against Lucca's cause. Of course, Black Alice had virtually zero desire to aid the goddess, and wanted all that power for herself. Thus, she slowly built up her army of rebelling monsters, ready to take over Elias's new world after it has been born. Despite her efforts to thwart Lucca by turning several of the monsters against him, she soon found herself backed into a corner. The hero having breached heaven itself, Black Alice and Promestine make their move on the unguarded Elias, who had sent Eden out to dispatch Lucca. Their plan, using a drug formed from the cells of Alice I herself, involved injecting Black Alice with the drug, and thereafter absorbing Elias to become the ultimate being of dark and holy energies. Surprisingly enough, the two succeed in overpowering Elias, Black Alice absorbing the goddess and becoming the ultimate being. However, through fighting Lucca, who defeats each ascended form of hers after another, Black Alice finds herself decaying and before long dying before the hero. After Black Alice's defeat, Elias emerges from her body, thanking Lucca for defeating Black Alice after she allowed herself to be absorbed, knowing the hero would triumph. Bypassing the restrictions of combining holy and dark energy by allowing Alice to absorb her, Elias had imbued herself with the ultimate power, this time backed by the almighty strength of a true god. However, despite all this, Lucca prevails. He strikes the evil goddess of light down and restores peace to his world once and for all. Throughout the course of the original history, there was simply one universal constant: a god cannot be killed, as their destruction would create a massive power vacuum in the universe. This power vacuum resulting from the death of Elias created a new causality, a world without Goddess Elias. Thus the first parallel world was born, a world without the Goddess of Light. 30 years ago, there was an event that caused a massive divide between man and monster. the slaughter of Remina. The peaceful monster coexisting city of Remina was destroyed completely by monsters of unknown reasons, causing a great period of distrust and unrest amongst monster kind during the reign of Alice the 15th. This period carrying on until the adventure of hero Luca. However, in reality, Remina was not destroyed by the monsters. Remina was destroyed by goddess Elias. She did this due to a particular experiment being conducted in the depths of Remina's laboratories, an experiment on Heinrich's sword, intended to bring the legendary hero back to life. However, in this first parallel world, there was no Elias to halt the Remina experiment. The experiment carried on as usual. The scientists drung something forth from the sword. The sword still stained with Black Alice's blood. It was there that Black Alice was ripped back into existence, after having fallen before Luca in the original timeline. It was there that, slowly coming to terms with what she has become after fusing holy and dark energies in the previous timeline, that Black Alice assumed her rightful throne as the first and only third god, the goddess of chaos. Using this newfound power, Black Alice annihilated the scientists of Remina and surged outwards from within the lab, shattering the world, splitting the timeline asunder, creating Adramelech and the Apoptosis, and forming the Tartarus Rifts. This, the great disaster, was the single event that caused the creation of billions of parallel worlds, thrusting the entire multiverse into a horrifying, twisted mess of chaos. And thus, Alephis the Eighth, the most feared monster lord of all generations, ascended to godhood and claimed her birthright to not only the world, but all worlds. Oh my, what's this? These fighters, all hailing from their own worlds. They are all in my world now. Perhaps they'd like to play as well. Oh, and these brilliant creators, giving creation to my new future playdates. This is turning into a very exciting party. And you, Mr. and Miss Readers, are you going to leave without saying hello? Statistics and visuals. Intro. Black Alice giggles as she walks onto the stage, innocently inspecting her opponent as she sways with her hands held behind her back, her signature ghostly aura flaring up around her body as she does so. Depending on her opponent, Black Alice may give an introductory voice line as well, which will be detailed in the extra section of the doc. Stand animation. Black Alice stands upright with her teddy bear held in her arms, giving her opponent an ominous wide-eyed smile as her distinct aura drifts upwards from her head and shoulders. If left idle, Black Alice will sway her arms side to side while giggling, eyes narrowing as she gives her opponent a smug grin. Occasionally, she will hold her teddy bear with one arm as she rests her palm against her cheek, licking her lips as she scans her opponent. Crouch animation. Black Alice crouches downwards, holding her teddy bear in her left hand as she smiles smugly. A middling crouch in terms of crouch height, somewhat poor at low profiling. Walking animation. Black Alice merrily walks forward, still holding her teddy bear with both arms as she walks. An average walk in terms of speed. Running animation. Black Alice jogs forward while clutching her teddy bear close to her chest, narrowing her eyes and smiling smugly at her opponent. a decent run in terms of speed, but barely below average. A decent run in terms of speed, barely above average. Airspeed, above average. Air acceleration, average. Ground speed, average. Jump height, average. Fall speed, above average. Weight, 101. Black Alice is surprisingly heavy despite her appearance, yet easily the lightest when stacked against her Monster Girl Quest boss contemporaries. This pairs poorly with her generally slow moves, few of her attacks quicker than frame 10, thus offering her opponent ample reward for breaking through her staggering offensive and stage control-based game. Height, above average, comparable to Zelda. Black Alice is a fair bit taller than average, considerably taller than most other humanoid characters, while having a slightly wider hurt box than most to boot. Average damage, high. As in the game she hails from, Black Alice deals a lot of damage. While not possessing the stupefying numbers of Elias or Adramelech, Black Alice is still exceedingly above the curve in terms of her damage output. Few attacks dealing below 10%, and many leading into even more damage, via her smothering pressure and short-term combos and confirms. Average kill power, high. While not egregiously powerful as Elias, Black Alice shares Adramelech's staggering kill consistency, almost all of her moves managing to kill at some point. And, unlike Adramelech, Black Alice's moves kill shockingly early for their versatility and relative speed. Most stray pokes from Black Alice capable of killing around 90%, or well, killing instantly, although that has its own caveats. This allows her to very harshly punish the smallest of mistakes, so be careful. Playstyle and archetype. Playstyle, paradoxical zoner. Black Alice is chaos. Her gameplay is erratic, terrifying, unpredictable, oppressive, and grows exponentially more dangerous over time. She revels in obliterating the fundamentals of the game and throwing her opponent's mind into the wildest of spaces, warping reality itself to annihilate opposition in the most unconventional of manners while completely dominating the stage. Black Alice's entire game plan revolves around instant kills, stage control, and timer manipulations, timing the stock regeneration mechanic she places upon her opponent and abusing her timeline manipulation skills to place her opponent back in a tricky spot before their stock is reset. To Black Alice, her opponent's stocks aren't an indication of their inevitable defeat. They're merely a renewable resource she's free to play with and distort at her whim. Despite her ability to completely dominate every single fundamental mechanic of the game, Black Alice is above all else a much more snowbally and initially averaged out variation of Elias or Adramelech. She can have some difficulty getting herself going if her opponent doesn't fall for her tricks and respect her zoning, and several of her own attacks have very self-detrimental side effects or paradoxical weaknesses if mishandled. In order to truly master the Monster Lord's abilities, you must get deep into your opponent's head. Make them fear your seemingly dominant and unfair tools. Hide your weaknesses, play with supreme confidence, take absurd risks whenever an opportunity arises, and have fun. Black Alice rewards sadistic gameplay. She absolutely isn't a character for the weak-hearted or generous. This is no fun romp against a boss like Super Heavy for her opponent, but a ticking time bomb of madness primed to erupt the second they turn their back. Outside of her ridiculous gimmicks, Black Alice is a surprisingly patient and tactical fighter tailor-made to oppress her opponent into making mistakes and fearing her options so that she can abuse her slower and more dramatic setup tools. She possesses a bevy of incredibly dominant pokes with decent speed and kill power, the most notable of which being a pretend mage. Her aggressive Sephiroth-like forward tilt and jump rope. Her incredibly disjointed kill-confirming down tilt. Her aerial game is equally frightening. Colossal buttons such as strumming shackles and Tsukishimoto denying insane amounts of the screen to her opponent while keeping Alice entirely safe on whiff. And, while potent, these buttons will not flat out win Black Alice neutral, as with something like Elias's forward air. She will instead have to rely on a smart combination of her tools, each move generally filling a specific yet versatile role that grows all the more lethal when her other options are factored in. After gaining enough meter or otherwise having conditioned her opponent properly, Black Alice can truly start to snowball out of control by setting risky time bombs on her opponent with Tea Party Invitation and Hot Potato, or otherwise controlling the huge areas of the stage with her multifaceted, direction-changing comet projectile, the ultimate in meter-burning utility. Once, or if, she has gained access to her coveted and blatantly overpowered Goddess of Chaos form, Black Alice's game plan grows into a far more familiar game of domination, as seen in Elias and Adramelech's kits. Gone are the usual requirements for her setup, Black Alice gaining access to ridiculously powerful moves and tools, all at the cost of an even worse disadvantaged state, and a very limited timer keeping the former from spiraling out of control. This timer itself is both the form's greatest strength and weakness. While it does put her on a clock, its mere existence allows her far greater strength than Elias and Adramelech before her. And well, there are a few methods to extend this timer, potentially allowing an expert Black Alice to spiral wildly out of control if her opponent doesn't nip in the bud. Advantages: ludicrously oppressive, insane damage potential, good mobility, excellent mobility in Goddess of Chaos form, incredible stage control and setups, mind-bogglingly confusing to fight, very large attacks across the board, extremely potent normals, Goddess of Chaos form in general, incredibly versatile moveset, may have a win condition, peak character design, genuinely oozes primal fear. Disadvantages: requires commitment to excel. Gimmicks and specials are very double-edged. Demands incredible awareness and a very good memory. Can lose momentum somewhat easily. Requires momentum to win. Demands good risk-reward management. Exploitable recovery. Struggles heavily in disadvantage. Generally below average frame data. Sadistic as hell. Not your friend. Made a Adramelech. That isn't great. Gimmicks. Time crunch. Black Alice's most immediately apparent feature is her chaos meter, an erratic red-colored meter that begins manifesting underneath her character portrait as it is filled, slowly distorting the rest of her portrait as it does so. Notably, Black Alice's signature ghostly aura grows stronger as the meter fills, culminating in a complete and automatic transformation to her Goddess of Chaos form at max meter. First and foremost, Black Alice's attacks are characterized into three distinct attack types: compressive, expansive, and existential. Compressive attacks actively compress the timeline, typically dividing or subtracting the match timer by a certain move-dependent variable and building Black Alice's meter. Expansive attacks release the chaos built up by timeline compression, adding time back onto the timer and using up built meter by a variable amount if the input is held. Expansive attacks may not always require meter to function, but will function differently or far more effectively if the meter burning variant is used. Finally, existential attacks are the most wild of the bunch. Extremely chaotic attacks that almost always culminate in one of Black Alice's signature instant kills. These attacks generally use up meter and decrease the timer by a certain amount. The strength of the attack's instant kill varying depending on the amount of meter burned. Successfully landing an instant kill for one of these existential attacks will trigger two of Black Alice's gimmicks: Existential Paradox and Parallel Division. Existential Paradox. Black Alice's existential moves, while usually requiring meter, are inherently powerful thanks to their instant kill properties. In order to balance out their potency, these attacks have a very unique property to discourage their use at lower percentages. Black Alice's opponent's stock will regenerate after being terminated, the regeneration speed varying depending on the move and her current amount of meter. In addition, unless in her Goddess of Chaos form, Black Alice cannot win the match with these attacks. If she manages to land an instant kill on her opponent's final stock, the victory screen will be interrupted abruptly as her opponent's stock regenerates immediately, resuming the match from where they left off. Trippy. Well, if the stocks regenerate, what's the point of landing an instant kill? Aren't you just screwing yourself over by undoing all your progress? Well, yes, unless you exploit Black Alice's freakiest gimmick: Parallel Division. This is where things really start to get weird. Successfully performing an instant kill with one of Black Alice's existential attacks will save the current match situation as of her opponent's death, the stock timeline presenting itself as a highlighted stage icon underneath Black Alice's portrait. Upon killing an opponent with an instant kill, their percent as of death is saved, plus whatever damage the instant kill dealt. Their position on the stage, their current amount of hits done from receiving the hit, the visuals hazards of the stage as of their death, the timer, the position of items on the stage, and even the point of the current song the match was on at the time of their death. Their stocks are not saved and will retain across timelines as normal. While all this is retained for her opponent, Black Alice's percent, meter, position, etc. is not saved. Using another instant kill after saving a timeline will simply overwrite the currently saved one. While Black Alice can only stock one timeline at a time, she is free to recall the currently stocked timeline at any time by way of rezone, her down special. To make matters even worse, rezone will not use up the timeline on use, and instead save the match if it connects, essentially allowing Alice to swap back to the old timeline if she uses rezone again, meaning she can suddenly switch back to a near completed match if she initialized the first swap near the end of the match. Confused yet? Well, what's the point of reverting your opponent's previous position and damage percentage aside from suddenly snapping them to previous location? Wouldn't that set you back a stock? Technically, yes, but recall the existential paradox gimmick. With the entire stock regeneration gimmick threatening to undo your instant kill progress as is, Black Alice can easily recall the moment she killed her opponent to regain all that damage she dealt, her positioning, plus whatever damage her instant kill of choice dealt them, even if she misses out on the lost stock. Hell, her hit stun is even retained, allowing her to combo through timelines. With this mighty ability at the ready from the moment she lands an instant kill, Black Alice is more than welcome to make your stocks her plaything at her own whim. The only thing keeping this from completely spiraling into the realm of stalling and breaking the game beyond repair is the fact that Black Alice does not recall her own stats. While this allows her to circumvent accumulating any additional damage from reverting to a stock she had high percent in, it disallows her from resetting her own stocks, and essentially resetting the state of the match as a whole, meaning that she is almost always taking a risk by using Rezone. Goddess of Chaos. If Black Alice chooses to let her meter reach its maximum rather than spend it throughout the match on expensive attacks, the ghostly aura around her body will begin to flare up violently. Similarly to Adramelech during her transformation, the match will pause and zoom in on Black Alice as the aura consumes her, the screen distorting and shaking violently as she begins to change. Black Alice's signature wide-eyed smile appears on her face as she hovers in the air, her hair taking on a two-tone purple and black color, as wings suddenly erupt from her back, one resembling an angel wing while the other resembles a demon wing. Her signature aura now wildly surges forth from her body as she slowly lands back upon the ground, a holy golden electricity now swirling around her leftmost limbs, while purple tentacles embellish the right demonic half of her body. Notably, a sort of yellow energy will trail from Black Alice's left eye as she moves, oddly familiar to Luca in his angel form. A loud rhythmic heartbeat-like droning fills the air as Black Alice remains in this form, the background almost appearing to melt as various wormholes open up across the background, essentially destroying whatever was once recognizable from the current stage's aesthetic. The timer will notably spiral into oblivion during this state, marching down at 10 times the usual pace and freely spiraling into the negatives. Scary. This, of course, never results in a timeout while Black Alice is in her Goddess of Chaos state, and a very clear hint that whichever timeline she currently occupies will be inevitably erased once she reverts back to normal. These drastic visual and timer-based effects also apply to whatever timeline Black Alice swaps to, essentially allowing her to corrupt both timelines at once if she pulls off a rezone while transformed. Black Alice's gameplay changes during this form. Black Alice's gameplay changes during this form are obscene, simply put. Not only does she gain huge buffs to her movement speed across the board, but several of her attacks and specials are transformed into far more offensively attuned variations, with much more range and utility, reminiscent of a character like Elias or Adramelech's buffed forms. Additionally, Black Alice's meter will act as if it has infinite capacity, all her expansive moves capable of acting as their meter buff forms with no drawbacks. But of course, while these buffs are substantial on their own, Black Alice gains the incredibly frightening ability to win the match from her instant kills, essentially making her Goddess of Chaos form a harrowing win condition if she saves it for her final stock. But of course, it's a double-edged sword. Not only must she refrain from spending her ever-valuable meter to reach this point, and solely focus on building it. Using this form only lasts so long, and results in the loss of her stock after the time runs out. Black Alice's Goddess of Chaos form lasts for only 10 seconds, and while she does have several methods to extend this timer, they are usually fairly committal or insignificant and only delay the inevitable. Although of course that doesn't mean you can just camp her out. She does have access to slower moves that substantially increase this timer. God forbid you let her. Once her time is up, Black Alice will hover in the air and giggle as the timeline implodes on itself, losing her own stock and completely erasing whatever timeline the match is currently taking place in, switching to her other stocked timeline on the spot. If Black Alice somehow doesn't have any alternate timelines stocked, corrupted both timelines, or hasn't used her Goddess of Chaos exclusive variation of Rezone that we'll get to later, a new timeline will be created if there is no extra timeline stored, Black Alice's opponent retaining their percent and such as normal before the timeline collapsed. The timer will reset completely here, though. Finally, Black Alice will gain far more mileage out of her Goddess of Chaos form by playing through her gameplay normally. A far less practical, insanely confident, or supremely evil Black Alice player could always cash in on her Charge Down special, a 300 frame Goddess of Chaos exclusive move that essentially wins her the game on the spot with a ridiculously over-the-top cinematic. Yeah. Statistics and visuals. Goddess of Chaos. Stand animation. Black Alice floats slightly above the ground with her arms held out casually to her sides, golden energy sparking and arcing violently from her left eye. If left idle, she will laugh her usual laugh. While inspecting her left arm, golden bolts of lightning coursing down the length of her arm and zapping chaotically from her fingers. She will also occasionally flex her right arm, parts of her arm cracking and splitting open to reveal eyes and tentacles hidden beneath her skin. Freaky. Crouch animation. Black Alice descends to the ground and takes a knee, resting her chin against her fist while looking upon her opponent with a look of superiority. As with her regular form, her crouch is below average in terms of low profiling. Walking animation. Black Alice descends to the ground and steps forward with her usual maniacal wide-eyed stare, arms open to her sides in a menacing manner as she struts forward, as if inviting her opponent to strike, about on par with her usual walk speed. Running animation. Black Alice takes to the air as she soars above the ground, similar in animation to Elias, leaving a trail of jutted and distorted ground in her wake. This variation of Black Alice's run is far faster than her usual, approaching but not quite reaching Elias's levels of speed. Nobody will reach Elias levels of speed. Airspeed, very high. Air acceleration, high. Ground speed, very high. Jump height, above average, +2 air jumps. Fall speed, high. Weight, 111. While barely heavier than Elias, Black Alice is much more comfortably a super heavy in her Goddess of Chaos form. This does her plenty of favors for survivability, but very few for her disadvantage, especially with her horrible aerial frame data. Height, above average, comparable to Zelda. Hey, we've already been over this. Black Alice's height is essentially the same in her Goddess of Chaos form, although she does float slightly while idle, increasing her height by a smidge. Average damage, very high. Average kill power, very high. Specials. Black Alice's specials define her entire game plan, possibly more so than with your average character. Her 4 specials control the 4 axes of her entire game plan: mind-melting madness, harrowing pressure, incontestable stage control, and sheer terrible power. Rezone, Tea Party Invitation, and Comet form the backbone of Black Alice's entire game plan. Rezone allows access to her maddening cross-timeline shenanigans. Tea Party Invitation allows her nigh infinite pressure given she doesn't hit herself with the attack. And Comet grants her horrifying stage control, essentially redefining her entire game plan once it has entered play. Juggling these horrifying tools and using them in tandem with Black Alice's fearsome normals is everything, and will easily make or break the game. Down special. Rezone. Attack type, relative. Meter use, none. Timer effect, reset to time of last instant kill. Damage, none. Kills at, never. Startup, 50 frames. 20 frames in Goddess of Chaos. Activity, 0 frames. Ending, 0 frames. Black Alice grins wildly as she flourishes her right arm overhead, gliding it through the air as dark magic leads her palm. Notably, this slows her falling momentum significantly if used in the air. If she is not interrupted by any means during the move's slow 50-frame startup, Black Alice will clench her fist and suddenly drag her hand down at the end of her arm's arc, the screen wildly shaking and distorting as she swaps to an alternate timeline. A timeline where her previously landed instant kill did not kill her opponent. Rezone is the crux of Black Alice's game plan. While the startup of the move is very slow, and essentially leads to no effect if she hasn't landed an instant kill earlier in the match, the literally infinite range of the move immediately makes it a huge thorn in her opponent's side if they cannot stop her from activating it in time. Despite how incredibly annoying and jarring it may be for her opponent to suddenly be dragged through timelines to the moment of their previously instant death, or simply a moment she last used Rezone if she is switching back to the original timeline, Black Alice's player must know exactly when and where to use this move to capitalize on the damage and hit stun she has dealt with the instant kill in the stopped timeline. Remember, her opponent will always appear in the location of the last instant kill on timeline swap. Black Alice must remember this to get combos between timelines. Of course, the only weakness of Rezone isn't in terms of opportunity. It is also extremely difficult to execute on your own terms. The move has notably long startup, a whole 50 frames, and given the massive potential drawback of her opponent regaining all that damage they took in the previous stock and potentially being comboed between timelines, they surely won't let you get away with it. If Black Alice is unable to get off Rezone after instant killing an opponent, their stock will inevitably regenerate, and she may very well lose all that progress, or at least end up at a massive percent deficit if it takes her ages to get an opportunity. This doesn't mesh very well with her opponent taking so little knockback as they respond for the instant kill either, due to being at 0%. It could very well be difficult to get some breathing room, which is why certain moves, such as Neutral Special, exist to buy her some time. But of course, Don't be fooled. 50 frames is still much lower than you'd expect for a move as momentum shifting as this. Rezone will undoubtedly dominate her opponent's psyche the moment she lands an instant kill. If in her Goddess of Chaos form, you can go ahead and throw all those weaknesses out the window. Rather than acting dramatic with an elaborate looking spell, Black Alice simply leans back in the air and giggles ominously as she snaps her fingers, the timeline swapping on the spot in a much shorter 20 frames. This is absolutely horrific for obvious reasons, as the supercharged Monster Lord is now free to essentially change timelines on a dime whenever she so pleases, whether it be to avoid attacks, combo between timelines, or just throw her opponent off guard. Down Special, Charged, Goddess of Chaos. 10th Dimensional Compression. Attack Type, Non-Euclidean. Form Loss Delay, Infinite. Timer Effect, divide by... Damage, pi times 10 to the 29th power. Kills at... Startup, 300 frames. Activity, 0 frames. Ending, 0 frames. If she opts to charge Rezone rather than use it normally, a feature exclusive to her Goddess of Chaos form, Black Alice will narrow her eyes and smile as she begins hovering in the air, the seams of the screen beginning to form a growing vignette as a loud rumbling fills the air. Black Alice then holds her hand towards the camera as an RPG text box appears on the bottom of the screen, signaling the name of her attacks as the game truly begins to cave in on itself. Once she has passed the 300 frame barrier of entry, Black Alice is given full invincibility as the background distorts and warps beyond recognition, the timer spiraling into a random mass of imaginary numbers and equations as her opponent takes incomprehensibly large amounts of damage. This goes on for a short while longer before the screen is completely consumed by chaos, the stage itself splitting in two as Adramelech herself makes an appearance, ripping through the stage and obliterating the timeline. To say the least, this is a form of timeline erasure unable to be topped even by the exit of Black Alice's final form. A dramatic cinematic begins to play after Adramelech makes her appearance. Black Alice's silhouette seen flying above the stage with her arm and wings outstretched, her new world beneath her as the world is consumed by chaos and a second great disaster. Eventually, after this absurd cinematic finishes, Black Alice slowly descends back upon the stage, which now resembles a barely recognizable plane of distortion and chaos. Although otherwise, it's pretty much a Final Destination clone. See Stages section. A somehow far scarier version of Adramelech will rip through the background, cleaving the remaining recognizable sections of the stage asunder with her blade. Alright, phew. Aside from being the most overdramatic special of all time, likely even by Make Your Move standards, 10th Dimensional Compression does have a lot more use than just looking cool and overheating your console. If Black Alice somehow manages to pull this move off in a match, which she can obviously only use once, a few noble things will occur. For one, she will gain infinite access to her Goddess of Chaos form across all her stocks, which is beyond horrific on its own. Secondly, all of Black Alice's previously stocked timelines will be erased, the usual stage image replaced by a chaotic, red version of its usual self. While this will require Black Alice to instant kill her opponent again to get any use of Rezone, it does mean that the match will never revert to whatever previous stage the match was played in. Things are too far gone for that now. Oh yeah, Black Alice's opponent will also be instantly killed during the cinematic, and given Goddess of Chaos is usually something reserved for Black Alice's final stock, this is pretty much just an instant win button. If Black Alice manages to close out the match with this move, the win screen will simply remain on the shot of her floating above her new world. If the rest of this moveset somehow wasn't enough to blow minds, here is the centerpiece of it all, and the crown jewel of the Goddess of Chaos form. An essentially unavoidable instant win condition, or at the very least an insanely over-the-top comeback mechanic for a badly struggling Black Alice. And well, by instant, I do mean 300 frames. This is essentially a Dramalex fully charged down special turned up to 11 in terms of forcing approaches and aggressive play, except without the liberty to cancel. This move absolutely isn't practical, ever. Even if Black Alice is across the stage, her opponent recovering on the other side, there's almost always a guarantee that she will be interrupted, unless she expertly uses her neutral special, and I mean it. This is not a move you're going to land in 99% of your matches. But when you do, when you get so deep in your opponent's head and somehow win yourself a whole 5 seconds of free time, they will bear witness to the most overdramatic cinematic in the entire game and either lose the match altogether or bow before their new supreme leader, the Goddess of Chaos. Neutral Special. Tea Party Invitation. Clap. Attack type, compressive. Meter gain, 2%. Timer effect. -1 second on use. Startup, 6 frames. Ending, 13 frames. Collapse. Attack type, compressive. Meter gain, 4%. Timer effect, -2 seconds on detonation. Damage, 8.4% to 3.2%. Scales depending on number of projectiles. Kills at 160% off top. Startup delayed, 13 frames. Startup manual, 30 frames. Activity explosion, 7 frames. Black Alice smiles smugly as she stands upright, clapping her hands together playfully every time the button is pressed. Are capable of clapping up to 5 times consecutively. Each clap summons an item that slowly hovers around Black Alice's body in a manner similar to Sephiroth's Shadow Flare. The items randomly ranging from teacups to teddy bears and items of similar playful flair. Also similar to Shadow Flare, she can only have up to 5 of these projectiles orbiting herself at once. These items will remain on Black Alice through timeline swaps. Anywhere from 7 to 11 seconds after an item has stuck around, it will suddenly distort wildly and gain horrific features, eyes and tentacles or something of the sort, depending on what fits the item best, before violently exploding in a fiery maroon flare of chaos after a 13-frame delay. This explosion deals decent damage and sends whomever it hits directly upwards, killing at very high percentages, with plenty of hit stun and shield stun to boot. Unlike Shadow Flare, which sees all of the projectiles consecutively exploding in a chain reaction, each item will have a very consistent delay before following the previous and collapsing, depending on the delay between Black Alice's claps. For example, if she simply mashed the claps as fast as possible all at once, each item will have a 19-frame delay, the first active frame of the clap itself. This means that while the first detonation always has a slightly random timing, The following detonations will always be completely consistent, essentially allowing Black Alice to program a string of commands to her items before they follow suit and detonate. Also, if RNG isn't your thing, or if you're aiming for a more specific setup, Black Alice can manually send the first projectile at any time by holding neutral special, her performing a 33 first active frame curtsy, as the projectile explodes with a much longer 30 frame delay. Additionally, if the special button is pressed a second time during this delay, Black Alice can spend 7% of her meter to cancel the attack altogether and reset the projectile's delay timer with an entirely consistent 5-second delay, which can be done indefinitely to stall, given you have enough meter. Okay, we must be missing something here. You're just planting the projectiles on yourself. What's the point of handpicking or delaying the order in which you barrage yourself with projectiles? The only real potential benefit this might have is setting up an item to explode on yourself to cancel end lag. But even then, it's a fairly niche option that only opens yourself up to combos. What gives? Of course, Black Alice can stick them to her opponent all at once. Performing a forward throw, landing an up special, or landing an instant kill will pair the items to her opponent, the items appearing on her opponent with their activation timer reset in the latter timeline swaps, as rather than remaining on Black Alice's opponent as they do for her during the swap, they will be saved in the previous timeline upon switching. This means that if her opponent has 2 seconds left on the items and she swaps a timeline, the items will have 2 seconds remaining the moment she swaps back to the timeline she planted them in. Now, with these deadly programmable timers strapped to your opponent, the sky is the limit. Depending on the delays set during the clapping beforehand, Black Alice could have them set up to combo into one another for a heap of damage assuming the first projectile hits, at a steady delay for combos with their normals, a very long delay for long-term harassment, a golden opportunity for pulling off an early rezone, or just at random to truly throw their head into the gutter. Random confirms galore. While this reward is absolutely massive, offering Black Alice far more fear to play with than Shadow Flare could ever offer thanks to the variable patterns, the move's most obvious downside is the fairly rigid requirement to tag an opponent. If Black Alice ever wants to curse her opponent with the items, she has to either grab or instant kill them first. And if she can't, she has to either take the hit and the following pattern barrage, or delay the move as many times as it may take, eating away at her precious meter each and every time. All in all, Tea Party Invitation is easily one of Black Alice's most fundamental specials, timeline shenanigans aside. While Rezone is the centerpiece of her gimmick interactions and mind games, her neutral special is so much more in terms of traditional gameplay, offering her nigh endless utility as long as everything falls into place. Before getting a handle on timelines and instant kills later into the match, Black Alice's gameplay revolves around smart juggling of her neutral special, side special, and huge normals to keep her opponent complacent. There's one more notable feature to neutral special, being its ability to gain meter. Outside of its potential as a scary pressure tool given the proper setup, neutral special gains Black Alice a lot of meter, whether or not she can attach her opponent with the curse. All 5 claps end up earning her a flat 10%, plus a whopping 20% after all 5 articles detonate. Not bad at all, even if Black Alice is forced to directly harm herself to gain some juice. Neutral Special, Goddess of Chaos. Timeline Disorder. Clap. Attack type, Compressive. Form Loss Decay, plus 0.4 seconds. Timer effect, minus 5 seconds on use. Armor, 3%. Startup, 6 frames. Ending, 12 frames. Collapse. Attack type, compressive. Form loss decay, plus 1 second on collapse. Timer effect, minus 44 seconds on detonation. Damage, 9.2% to 4.1%. Scales depending on number of projectiles. Killzat, not applicable. Startup, 30 frames. While in her Goddess of Chaos form, Black Alice's neutral special gains a horrific twist. Rather than summoning any silly Tea Party items and bothering to place them on herself in good fun and faith, each clap will summon a distorted black void near her opponents, which will circle them as normal with the typical random delay and programming properties of her usual neutral special, all coming at the cost of Black Alice's ability to manually collapse or delay the voids. This is terrifying enough, in that Black Alice can tag her opponent no matter where they are relative to her, but it gets worse. Rather than simply detonating for combo or confirmed potential, the voids slowly cave in on themselves and explode once their timer is up, hitting their opponent for more damage than usual if they fail to shield within the 30-frame window, and freezing time across the entire stage for half a second on hit. Black Alice obviously able to act at will during the time freeze. As with her usual neutral special, Black Alice can abuse this time freeze for combos, gaining ground, dragging out the timer for her Goddess of Chaos form, or now stalling for a particular win condition. Impractically, in most cases. The time freeze acts very similarly to the usual hits in terms of what Black Alice herself can gain, although thanks to how the freeze works, Black Alice can, for example, smack a knockback influenced opponent with something like a spike to alter their knockback angle. This time freeze is also far more annoying in multiple player battles, the match freezing for everyone but Black Alice and her teammates if team attack is off, if her opponent manages to get hit by the void implosion. Something else to note is the strength of these voids against shield. While in her base form, the time bombs can be shielded safely, with almost no debilitating shield stun or damage. The amped up voids deal far more shield damage, potentially breaking a shield outright if all 5 voids connect sequentially. This typically isn't a problem in of itself, thanks to a more spaced out patterns being more optimal for extensive combos and pressure, until you notice the colossal amount of shield damage Alice can deal in her Goddess of Chaos form. Combining this with the fact that Black Alice's enhanced neutral special always gains her more time in her Goddess of Chaos form, whether or not the voids hit, and you have a terrifying and almost entirely unavoidable move that easily makes the cornerstone of her game plan. Side Special, Comet. Attack type, expensive. Meter use, 15%. Meter use, freeze, 10%. Timer effect, plus 5 seconds on summon. Damage, 3.3% plus 12.2% explosion. Damage, frozen, 3.3%. Kills at 115% off top. Startup, 22 frames. Startup redirection 8 frames. Ending 26 frames. Ending redirection 17 frames. Black Alice smiles darkly as she raises a finger to her side, bright blue energy swirling around the tip of her finger and coalescing into a fairly large orb of icy blue fire, before whipping it forward in the direction of her choosing once she has finished charging the orb. The projectile, while fairly slow moving to start, quickly accelerates to incredible speeds and travels an entire stage and a half's length in distance before exploding violently. The explosion about the size of an exploding megaflare. As with its inspiration, Comet will also explode once it comes in direct contact with an opponent or the stage. Comet is a very mighty projectile in its own right, very reminiscent of Adramelech's upgraded spell in the form of Meteor. While not dealing the egregious 18% plus damage of Meteor, and having far more reasonable startup and spammability, Comet still deals very impressive damage, and can be angled at will, and is capable of killing far earlier than Meteor ever could. This alone makes Comet a very useful meter burning special in Alice's kit, the slow-moving startup allowing her to easily catch approaching opponents, while the extreme acceleration allows it to effectively zone or edge guard. Not to mention the low end lag and high hit stun allows Black Alice confirms at lower percentages. Outside of it confirming and controlling space, Comet is, plain and simple, an extremely powerful and shockingly fast to start killing projectile, stronger than most other projectiles in the game while having the benefit of vertical knockback. The moment she has enough meter stocked to whip one around, its other applications aside, Black Alice is essentially granted access to a long-range smash attack. Throwing projectiles of her own? Bang. Whiffing from long range? Bang. Not paying attention? Atomized. This sheer strength allows Black Alice to essentially threaten high percent kills from anywhere on the stage, forcing her opponent to tread lightly, more so than they already were with her other options. Of course, this is Black Alice we're talking about. Did you really think it would be as simple as a strong killing projectile? Inputting Side Special a second time while Comet is already active, we'll see Black Alice ominously pointing towards the projectile and spending an extra 10% meter, the screen briefly rumbling as the comet is frozen in time. Time-frozen comets behave very differently from the standard comet, remaining active for up to 8 seconds while possessing a constant, very weak hitbox with low outwards for knockback, also persisting through timeline swaps, unlike the usual projectile. Inputting Side Special yet again, while a frozen comet is on screen, we'll see Black Alice dramatically swinging her arm in a chosen direction, the comet redirecting itself and unfreezing as it flies off in the player's chosen direction, again acting as a normal projectile. This action does not cost meter. Time-frozen comets, to avoid stupid Gordo-esque ledge trapping, can only hit opponents twice before forcefully dissipating, although this queue is refreshed if the comet is sent and frozen again. Now, with the ability to freeze Comet in time and redirecting the projectile at will, Comet's true purpose becomes far clearer and cements itself as a staple of her game plan. Given enough meter, Black Alice is free to continuously freeze and redirect the projectile at will, allowing her to potentially combo with a redirected comet, remotely pressure or zone her opponent from a safe distance, or even edgeguard with a frozen projectile's lingering hitbox. Combining Comet with Neutral Special allows Black Alice to truly choke her opponent out with pressure, almost immediately cracking even the strongest willed opponents and forcing them to respect whatever she dishes out. Finally, there is one application of the redirection that I initially left out. The actual redirection animation can cancel out of any action Black Alice is currently performing. Thankfully, since the animation is somewhat laggy, it can rarely be used to lower the end lag of a move, but regardless allows Black Alice a horrendous bevy of new options when a frozen comet is on screen. She can wind up an attack and feint by redirecting the comet, combo directly into the comet by canceling her hit directly into redirection toward her opponent, use the cancel to turn herself around mid-air, or even make typically untrue combos airtight with one of her high hit stun redirected comets landing between each hit of her combo. This is easily one of the biggest strengths of burning more meter on a comet to time freeze it, so watch out. Side Special, Goddess of Chaos. Dial Up Destruction. Attack Type, Compressive. Form Loss Delay, not applicable. Timer Effect, minus 58 seconds on use and redirect. Damage, 18.8% to 30.3%. Kills at 90% to 55% ledge. Startup, 27 frames to 60 frames. Startup redirection, 12 frames to 40 frames. 12 frames to 40 frames. Ending, 5 frames. Ending redirection, 9 frames. Black Alice smirks as she winds her arm up, the screen shaking as the move is held, until she swings her arm forward and points, a large rift shattering open before her as a familiar face surges forth through the abyss. Adramelech, nearly twice her usual size and possessing a colossal blade, will launch forth from the rift and cleave her blade upwards as she dashes, moving from 2 to 8 character lengths forward depending on how long Black Alice charged the move for prior. This charge also determining the strength of her attack. Similar to something like Zelda's Phantom, Adramelech acts as a constant hurt box that is capable of absorbing attacks, and unlike Phantom, will not die in a single hit, instead having 30% health to her name. After Adramelech performs her first attack, she will remain on screen for 5 seconds, ominously observing Black Alice's opponent while retaining an active hurt box. While she cannot be directly damaged, her hurt box allows her to absorb certain attacks and potentially trap her opponent in their own hit lag. Think of a much tankier Phantom. What makes Adramelech truly scary in this passive state is not her wall-like properties, however. It is Alice's ability to command Adramelech, her able to redirect her precious timeline-shattering monstrosity as with her comets, and send her charging in any direction of her choice. All without any meter cost, of course. Startup time the only true expenditure. These redirections can be charged as with the initial deployment, and notably charge much faster, allowing Black Alice to remotely send a fully charged Adramelech barreling down screen in a mere 40 frames. To put it lightly, Adramelech is one of the staple features of Black Alice's Goddess of Chaos form. While she can be fairly slow to wind up, especially so if fishing for bigger hits, the distance she travels is extreme, her damage potential is colossal, and her area of effect is huge. Extremely reminiscent of Zelda's Phantom, And while Alice can't quite set Adramelech and move around before she strikes, as with Phantom, she's still rendered actionable just as Adramelech starts to move, the summoning animation having extremely low ending lag and allowing her to play around the charging apoptosis with ease. The redirection, although lacking the lag-canceling abilities of Comet's redirection, allows Black Alice to continuously reposition Adramelech in whatever direction she desires, throwing out massive hitboxes all over the screen with very little drawback, therefore allowing her completely uncontested stage control, punishing every mistake in turn. The greatest drawback to Adramelech is reminiscent of Black Alice's neutral special, that being its ability to harm her commander. While not harming Black Alice directly, Adramelech's blade simply passing through her as normal. Adramelech's death, courtesy of her 30% health, comes with a hefty 3-second time loss for Black Alice's Goddess of Chaos timer, or, if granted indefinite time thanks to 10th dimensional compression, a whopping 30% recoil damage. This property, while keeping Adramelech far from being vulnerable, forces Black Alice to pay closer attention to her Warden of Annihilations once she's summoned, only giving her player even more to keep track of if she so chooses to dip into this wealth of cosmic power. Up Special: Barry's Gluttony. Attack type: Compressive. Meter gain: 5% on grab, 25% on kill. Timer effect: minus 11 seconds on kill. Damage: 15%. Kills at 110%. Instant. Startup: 10 frames. Activity: 9 frames. Ending: 31 frames. Black Alice grins voraciously as she holds Barry upwards with both hands, the teddy bear almost doubling in size as it splits down the middle, launching forth a grotesque pink tentacle from its stomach in a diagonal upward angle, attempting to snatch the nearest ledge, comet, or dreadfully unlucky opponent. In terms of recovery, Black Alice possesses a traditional tether recovery with excellent range, pairing very nicely with their good airspeed. Although, while tethers are inherently strong for mixing up recoveries, this is pretty much all she has, leaving her recovery somewhat predictable. In terms of offense, Black Alice's up special stands out far more significantly. While a bit below the curve in terms of startup speed and end lag, making it a bit below average in terms of punishing shield pressure and risky to throw out, her up special acts as a very long-range true command grab, drawing unfortunate opponents into Barry's awaiting stomach, sealed within as the teddy bear returns to its normal size. Below 110%, where the attack simply kills her opponent with no drawback, Black Alice's up special instead uniquely condenses her opponent into a throwable item. Barry herself becoming an item that Black Alice is free to toss about at her leisure, her opponent forced to match out to free themselves. The bear appears back in Black Alice's arms after they break out. Similar to being frozen while trapped within Barry, Black Alice's opponent will take half damage from all direct sources, also taking a flat 3% whenever Barry is whipped against a surface, bouncing off whatever surface she hits at an appropriate angle. While this may seem fairly conditional, especially since mashing free takes a full second maximum near the kill percent, This offers Black Alice an opportunity to throw her opponent exactly where she wants them before they mash free, potentially allowing a true follow-up or otherwise some sort of horrific position-dependent pressure. This also makes Black Alice quite scary to edgeguard from above, as Barry will tether onto an opponent rather than the stage in certain occasions, allowing Black Alice to simply chuck them directly downwards as she makes her ascent, which, as will be seen later, has some nuances of its own. The move doesn't place Alice into free fall after all, and she can use up special immediately after the Barry projectile is removed. To avoid egregious cheese, Black Alice cannot simply KO her opponent by tossing Barry into the blast zone. The teddy bear instead screen wrapping around the top blast zone and resetting her opponent's match timer. This allows Black Alice potentially scary confirms given her positioning, notably scary confirms into up air or up tilt, which interacts uniquely with Barry as is. Or something more unique, a lethal 50-50 kill off the bottom blast zone given her opponent's mashing. If her opponent mashes blindly the moment after being trapped in Barry, they can very well escape and kill themselves just before hitting the blast zone, a sort of conditioning Black Alice is happy to work with. This mere fear of mashing too early may encourage your opponent to refrain from mashing outright at lower percents, just allowing Black Alice more liberty to have her fun. Outside of allowing Black Alice free movement manipulation and potential instant kills, Up Special is an excellent tool for building meter, gaining 5% with every successful grab, and a whopping 25% if she lands the instant kill. However, if she chooses to invest a bit of her hard-earned meter into the move, Barry has one more ability: the ability to swallow time-frozen comets. If Black Alice's precious teddy bear manages to eat a frozen comet, it will begin to glow as the comet returns to its stomach, turning Barry back into an item that can be preserved across timeline swaps, just as with time frozen comets. Although, unlike her previous incarnation as a limited use item, Barry now becomes a potentially permanent item that Black Alice is free to play with, dealing a set 7.5% on a hit with fairly high horizontal knockback, courtesy of the astronomical fireball housed within the bear. This is incredibly powerful in terms of combos and pressure, allowing Black Alice ridiculous shield pressuring or Peach-esque item combos, not to mention the Comet Gobble resets her side special, allowing her to freely toss out an active comet all the while. As almighty as this may be, there is one very large drawback. Black Alice cannot use her up special while Barry is in this item state, and therefore cannot recover until Barry is tossed into the blast zone, proving extremely lethal if her opponent manages to take hold of the teddy bear for their own uses. So be careful. Don't let those signature paradoxical weaknesses of hers get to you. Before we finish up here, we should likely mention that 110% instant kill. Of course, outside being an excellent source of meter, this conditional instant kill is Black Alice's only true instant kill outside of Goddess of Chaos form. No stock regeneration nonsense attacked. This has the benefit of essentially scaring Alice's opponent from taking to the air from 110% onwards, simply allowing her far more liberty to abuse her excessively powerful grounded normals. Special Cancel, Goddess of Chaos, Red Shift, Attack Type, Relative, Form Loss, 3 seconds, Timer Effect, minus 23 seconds, Startup, 3 frames, Ending, 11 frames. Of course, Black Alice has one more trick up her sleeve in her Goddess of Chaos form, at least in the special department. coming at the cost of her own Goddess of Chaos timer, or only usable once per stock if rendered infinite Goddess of Chaos time. Black Alice may mash the special button during any attack, a visual tearing effect appearing over her form as she rips herself out of the animation, body blurring as she cancels the move altogether and dashes a short distance forward in the player's desired direction, actionable almost immediately afterwards. Of course, the animation is entirely intangible from the first frame until the third, as well. Redshift, despite being so limited use, otherwise detrimental to her longevity, is a stupidly powerful escape option for Black Alice. Or well, it's much more than that really. It allows her to cancel any move as a feint, get herself out of any sticky situation on the first frame, grant herself access to impossible kill confirms or combo extensions, and so much more. The sky is truly the limit. Just don't burn yourself out doing so. Nothing is more embarrassing than setting up cool redshift combo just to kill yourself by burning away all your time. Something very interesting to note about redshift is its change in requirement across normal and infinite use Goddess of Chaos. While Goddess of Chaos traditionally, Black Alice can theoretically use the move 3 times, although it'll obviously burn away all her remaining time. It may be entirely guaranteed to be usable after landing 10th dimensional compression for infinite time, yet you are far more limited in a way, since you have just one use per stock. Not that you'll need it anyway, with how obscene the form is in general. Normals. Black Alice's grounded normals almost entirely define her zoning and conditioning game, excelling at harassing or scaring her opponent into behaving, so that she can abuse her specials. While she almost entirely lacks fast grounded normals, her 11 frame forward tilt being her fastest, almost all of her normals are substantially fast for their strength or ability, truly discouraging her opponent from recklessly approaching lest they only play into her game. The most immediately notable of Black Alice's normals are her forward and down tilts, Pretend Mage and Jump Rope respectively. These two moves are excellent at pressure and zoning respectively, annoying opponents into brazenly approaching where they may eat an up tilt, instant killing up air, up special, or her almighty jab, Die For Me. An instant killing jab that immediately allows Black Alice access to her timeline swapping shenanigans. Jab, Die For Me. Attack type, Existential. Meter use, minus 18% on hit. Timer effect, minus 30 seconds on hit. Stock regen time, 5 to 50 seconds. 0 to 100% meter. Damage, 22.3%. Killzat, instant kill. Armor, 3%. Startup, 12 frames. Activity, 2 frames. Ending, 33 frames. Ending shield whiff, 15 frames. Black Alice pulls a Flandre and holds out her partially clenched hand while smiling ominously, the aura around her body flaring up significantly. Similar to something like a hit grab, she will simply do nothing afterwards if nobody is close enough, or if her opponent shields. Yet, if an opponent is within arm's reach or a bit further, given the small disjoint, her eyes widen with madness as she clenches her fist, her opponent exploding very violently as the entire screen shakes. Black Alice's jab, although very slow, has good range, a smidge of armor, and of course acts as one of her signature instant kills. immediately granting her access to her timeline manipulation shenanigans, given she can land a rezone afterwards. Black Alice's jab is one of her scariest close-range tools despite its miserable speed, threatening horrific instant kills and massive retainable damage via rezone. Jab is easily one of Alice's strongest and cheapest instant kills given enough meter, the stock regeneration taking egregious amounts of time when nearer to full meter, therefore allowing her plenty more time to harass her opponent and drain their stocks, potentially allowing a very early cheese before their stocks even regenerate. Outside of its ability to threaten instant kills, Black Alice's jab is bizarrely enough a very potent feint. Due to killing her opponent with certainty on hit, and outright whiffing against even shields thanks to the move's bizarre hit grab properties and shorter whiff animation against shield, a truly wild Black Alice player can purposefully whiff jab on shield to trip up her opponent, their expectation of shielding and punishing on an attack blowing up in their face as she is allowed ample time to grab them in their confusion. This is, obviously, an incredibly risky and bizarre strategy, although due to the potency of Black Alice's throw game, a very worthwhile one, truly offering her massive reward for playing unconventionally, as she should be. Also, the animation is strikingly similar to forward smashes, potentially allowing her to take this feint potential even further. Forward tilt. Pretend mage. Attack type. Expansive. Meter burn. Cost. 25%. Timer effect. Plus 2 seconds on tipper. Damage. 9.2%. Damage, tipper, 13.4%. Damage, Kaiser Phoenix, 20.3%. Kills at 120% ledge. Kills at tipper, 80% ledge. Kills at Kaiser Phoenix, 65% ledge. Startup, 11 frames. Activity, 3 frames. Ending, 20 frames. Black Alice smiles cheerfully as she dons a black and green witch hat, pulling forth a golden scepter as she dramatically swings it far outwards in the direction of her choosing, tip of the staff glimmering with magical energy. If Black Alice chooses to use the move multiple times in succession, she will keep the hat on her head and only remove it once she performs another action. Technically, if she sits idle afterwards, she can play pretend and act as if she's Alice Tramaria until she moves again. Easily one of Black Alice's most fundamental neutral tools, her forward tilt is a very long-range disjoint attack, similar in range to Shulk's forward tilt, with decent startup and excellent kill power at the tipper, the magically charged tip of the scepter possessing impressive strength and hit stun. In addition to the generally speedy startup given the range, Black Alice's forward tilt possesses impressively low end lag, a mere 20 frames, allowing her to brazenly swing around and spam the move at her leisure, especially so on shield with the high shield stun the tipper possesses. The fast and safe nature of this move allows Black Alice to use it as a hyper-aggressive mid-range stoning tool, wildly beating upon her opponent's shield in the mid-range or otherwise reminding them of their place just out of range. A lethal tactic when used in conjunction with any nearby time-frozen comets. If her opponent chooses to disrespect this move, they may very well eat a tipper and die shockingly early, allowing her a harrowing and riskless conditioning tool right out of the gate to force her opponent to submit. Overall, while forward tilt may immediately appear to be Black Alice's best button, it does come packed with a few drawbacks despite its strength, the most notable of which being its complete lack of meter gain. Unlike her slower and more passive grounded space control in down tilt, forward tilt is entirely incapable of gaining meter. You gain absolutely nothing from throwing this move about, and very well may be wasting time if not actively crushing your opponent with it. This may seem a bit of a harsh assessment, given how easily some characters could dominate the entire game with such an oppressive move and no such meter. Although as Black Alice, you'll really want that meter, with the absurd strength of meter-hungry tools such as Comet and the overarching threat of her Goddess of Chaos form. Of course, that's not all. Forward tilt isn't just incapable of gaining meter, it's downright greedy, and doubles as one of Black Alice's strongest meter-burning tools. If the input is held while Black Alice has 25% meter or more in reserves, her cheery smile will devolve into a dark grin as she tips her hat downwards, the end of her scepter erupting into a violent flame as she casts one of her iconic signature moves, Kaiser Phoenix. This held attack, at the cost of an additional 10 frames of startup, sees a giant gout of explosive flame erupt from the tip of Alice's scepter after her swing, briefly taking the shape of a phoenix as it dissipates into a blazing smoke. This charged variation of the attack deals far more damage and knockback, blessed with a truly spectacular hitbox, essentially a large column of fire slapped upon the end of her scepter. While far slower than the typical attack, this supercharged variation of forward tilt is an exceptionally powerful pseudo-smash attack, the column of fire capable of covering whichever angle Black Alice desires, thanks to the tilt's angling properties, essentially allowing her horrific 360-degree coverage. While it is a very expensive meter burn, it can easily prove valuable for catching your opponents off guard. Not to mention, it retains all of forward tilt's usual shield safety, this time dealing extremely potent shield damage. Forward tilt, Goddess of Chaos. Mandelbrot theorem. Attack type, compressive. Form loss delay, plus 1 second per hit, plus 2 on extension hit. Timer effect, minus 8 seconds on use, minus 2 on extension. Damage, 11.4%. Damage, extension, 15.3%. Kills at 110%, ledge. Kills at extension, 75%, ledge. Startup, 11 frames. Startup extension, 6 frames. Activity, 4 frames. Activity extension, 2 frames. Ending, 26 frames. Black Alice laughs wildly as she whips her arm outwards while stepping forward, chaotic energy zapping across her arm as it shatters into fractal-like glass, greatly extending the overall range of their move immediately after the arm swing. As with her standard forward tilt, Black Alice is free to angle this move as she sees fit, with a little bonus. Additional inputs will see Black Alice's arm splitting apart further, the glass-like fractals swirling outwards from the base of her arm as a powerful glassy spear ejects outwards in the player's chosen direction. Further inputs causing a second, smaller spear to split out from the first, and so on, repeatable up to 3 times. Each additional extension is fully angleable, allowing for some very wacky patterns. Mashing the input will cause the spheres to jet out of one another at a much faster rate, coming at the cost of the ability to angle each sphere. So, that's quite a lot, isn't it? Rather than performing the simple lagless staff swing, Black Alice trades disjoint and sheer safety for horrendous mix-ups. Her ability to further angle and extend the range of the attack, allowing her to strike opponents from unexpected angles and ranges, still threatening very early kills from such ranges thanks to the strength of the extension hitbox. While each extension thankfully cannot combo into the next, the first extension can combo out of the initial swing thanks to the sheer hit stun, offering up a huge 26.7% out of a single forward tilt. Of course, since fairness is clearly not the name of the game here, Black Alice gains a frightening amount of Goddess of Chaos time back for landing either the raw tilt or the extension, potentially making up for the lengthy duration of the attack and leaving her with a net gain. While the use cases for this move are essentially endless, the most notable use of the attack outside of striking opponents from any angle is its ability to protect Black Alice. While the extended spears are only active for 2 frames, she can easily mash them out and curve them upwards to cover her head from aerial approaches, or even threaten jarringly powerful edgeguards by curving the extension behind the ledge, or even strike an approaching opponent from behind. Oh yes, the extensions also deal significant shield damage, which means you could loop them back on themselves after one strikes shields, potentially breaking a shield outright with multiple hits. Horrifying. One last thing is the attack's ability to interact with timeline swaps. The sheer angle ability of the move allowing her to immediately capitalize on the residual instant kill hit stun and potentially immediately kill her opponent after the timeline has been swapped, no matter where she stands. Who cares about cross-timeline combos when you can have cross-timeline kill confirms? Down tilt, jump rope, attack type, compressive, meter gain, 6% on hit, 1% on whiff, timer effect, none, damage, 11.4%, kills at 110% off top, startup, 14 frames, activity, 5 frames, ending, 24 frames. Black Alice absolutely doesn't rip off Vera's sweep from GBVS as she contorts her body, lowering herself dramatically as she whips her arm outwards while leaning far back, laughing joyously all the while. Her arm splits open into a purple tentacle midway through the swing, whipping along the ground in a very generous space before herself, somewhat comparable to a slightly taller Ridley down tilt with even more horizontal range. While considerably laggier than forward tilt, Black Alice's down tilt is a far longer ranged and more consistently powerful attack with a bevy of its own unique uses, chief of which being its ability to gain meter on both hit and whiff. Down tilt is a far less aggressive move than forward tilt, much more solidly a defensive zoning tool than a pressure tool thanks to its laggier start and ending lag, possessing far more range to compensate, reaching even further across the ground than the likes of Ridley's massive down tilt. Outside of its sheer range, down tilt is a move with generous activity, solid damage, and good kill power, capable of killing off the top around 110% while enabling short aerial confirms at lower percents. This overall allows Black Alice to play fairly opportunistically with the move, throwing it out from sufficient range to fish for a rare confirm, typically into a faster move such as neutral air, or a much more substantial up air confirm with Comet's assistance. Another valuable niche this move possesses is its low profile. Black Alice's significant backwards lean, allowing her to dodge several thin attacks. Unfortunately, while it may be able to gain meter at a startling rate and threaten her opponent from extreme distances, Black Alice's down tilt isn't without fault, and is overall significantly less dominant than her oppressive forward tilt. Aside from being substantially low and harder to mash out belligerently, down tilt is not a disjoint. The large sweeping tentacle possessing a hurt box to compensate for her extreme low profile. This often results in Black Alice losing direct trades from afar, especially against disjoints, mandating precision and expert spacing. Overall, down tilt is an excellent meter gaining alternative to forward tilt, trading sheer aggression and speed for range and consistency. Despite filling a similar role in terms of zoning, it should not be used in place of forward tilt, and neither should forward tilt be used in place of it. A good Black Alice player should be capable of deciding which move is more optimal in each given scenario. Down tilt, Goddess of Chaos, Necroid Symphony, Attack type, Compressive, Form Loss Decay, plus 2 seconds on hit, Timer effect, minus 11 seconds on hit, Damage, 17.3%, Kills at 80% off top, Armor, 3%, Startup, 18 frames, Activity, 3 frames, Ending, 38 frames. Performing an all too familiar animation, Black Alice clenches her hands and lifts them into the air while crouching, smiling smugly as the ground across the entire stage wavers briefly before shattering into cosmic glass, ribbons of decaying timeline fluttering through the air in the ground's wake. As with Ilias and Adramelech before her, Black Alice's Goddess of Chaos exclusive down tilt is a full-screen, Quake-like down tilt, primarily striking grounded opponents in a mere 18 frames, staggering speed that her contemporaries would die for. Oh, and it's far stronger than even Elias's down tilt, killing a whole 45% earlier. Fitting for the true goddess of all, is it not? Black Alice's down tilt is an exceedingly dominant move in her ultimate form, keeping her opponent extremely weary at all times while gaining her some frightening bonus time for her almighty transformation if she manages to land a move. If she manages to land the move. Down tilt alone is to die for, and could easily carry the Goddess of Chaos to victory, as if she needed the help with her bevy of overpowered tools. It can harshly punish zoning or whiffing from any distance, force jumps, or simply catch her opponent sleeping. None too forgiving in terms of strength as it sends them hurtling towards the sky. The attack's only true fault is its colossal end lag, which of course can be alleviated by a well-timed redshift if she can take the 3 seconds of time loss. Overall, this may very well be one of the most dominant tools the Goddess of Chaos has access to. Just don't waste your precious time throwing it out if your opponent keeps jumping. Up tilt, Beyond the End, Attack type, Expansive, Meter burn cost, 10%, increases by 5% per consecutive use. Timer effect, plus 1 second on meter burn. Damage, Tipper, 14.8%. Damage, Sour, 9.3%. Damage, Drag Down, 4.3%. Kills at Tipper, 75% off top. Kills at Sour, 110% off top. Startup, 10 frames. Activity, 4 frames. Ending 18 frames. Black Alice joyously thrusts her arm upwards as her hand splits apart. A long, thorny green vine launching upwards and quickly skewering the place directly overhead before she retracts her arm, all done in a deceptively quick motion. This move is capable of being angled slightly forward or backward, allowing her to more easily snipe opponents out of the sky and threaten early kills with a mighty half-second long hit-stop inducing tipper hitbox. If Black Alice's player opts to mash the buttons after successfully spearing an opponent with the sweet spot, she will retract the arm while keeping her opponent skewered, slamming them downwards in an untechable spike for additional damage, popping them back up into the air for an immediate follow-up, all at the cost of 10% of her meter. Black Alice's up tilt is one of her strongest anti-airs, essentially a potentially more rewarding meter burning equivalent to the longer-ranged up special, offering early kills and harrowing combo extensions given she burns some of her stored chaos. While the chaos isn't capable of hitting grounded opponents, the ability to angle the strike and the relative speed of the attack versus something like Sephiroth's up tilt or Belmont up smash allows Black Alice to consistently snipe opponents with this move, or force air dodges that she can easily follow up with thanks to the low ending lag. The move offers even more utility once the optional skewer drag down is considered, allowing Black Alice to milk even more damage out of a sweet spot hit, or even a kill confirm into up air if her opponent's damage isn't quite high enough to kill outright with the tipper. Furthermore, if she has enough meter, Black Alice can technically loop the move into itself multiple times, although consecutive uses of up tilt within the same combo will increase the meter cost of each follow-up. Not to mention the timing for landing a tipper out of the follow-up is fairly tight, requiring some precise delay. Finally, among the bevy of uses her up tilt provides, the drag down property has a special interaction with her up special. For whatever reason she may have for doing so, skewering Barry with the tilt allows her to drag the teddy bear down into her hands without any meter cost. This is decent for screwing with a Barry trapped opponent, or otherwise mixing up her intentions with the Comet holding Barry. This property also applies to normal items. Imagine if Black Alice were to team up with Kagetsu Mugi in doubles. How fitting. Something else to note about Black Alice's up tilt is its importance in her kit. Her aerials are incredibly slow across the board, often far above 10 frames in startup, and thus imply an aerial weakness, which moves such as up tilt and up special clear up nicely, making up for its generally one-dimensional nature by filling an incredibly valuable weak spot in her kit. It may be a somewhat precise move, but it is undoubtedly valuable, allowing her room to adapt in an area she otherwise struggles to control. While in her Goddess of Chaos form, Black Alice simply thrusts a purple tentacle overhead instead. Aside from visuals, the attack is now frame 8, now far better for sniping opponents. Have fun! Dash attack, Devilish Cascade. Attack type, compressive. Meter gain, 10% on sweet spot, projectile hit. Timer effect, -1 second on hit. Damage, sweet spot, 13%. Damage, lingering, 8.4%. Kills at, sweet spot, 90%, ledge. Kills at, lingering, 280%, ledge. Startup, 8 frames. Activity, Sweet Spot, 3 frames. Activity, Linger, 13 frames. Ending, 25 frames. Black Alice closes her eyes merrily as she launches herself towards her opponent, butt first, clutching Barry to her chest while various tentacles trail outwards from beneath her dress. If Barry isn't present due to her up special shenanigans, she will instead joyfully hold her arms up in the air. Black Alice's dash attack is a surprisingly powerful lingering dash attack, launching her a significant distance forward and lingering for a long time afterwards. Notably, while the lingering hit is capable of crossing up on shields for mix-ups, the sweet spot will leave Alice harmlessly bouncing against shields, dealing substantial shield damage and leaving Black Alice annoyingly safe against most characters. Starting from the third startup frame up until the last frame of the move Sweet Spot, Black Alice's dash attack possesses a very special ability: the ability to completely destroy and nullify any projectile in her wake with a small magical pop, gaining her 10% meter on the spot as if she landed the sweet spot against an opponent. This is an immensely powerful tool and one of Dash Attack's main draws. Precise Black Alice players able to altogether nullify most projectiles and gain free meter given they can get the timing down. Not only does it excel in deleting projectiles and gaining Black Alice meter, but it buffs the attack itself. The absorbed magical energy swirling around her as she is sent outwards even further. The activity of the sweet spot lasting an additional 8 frames. Not only does this allow her a larger window to land the stronger half of the attack, but it grants her an additional boost in speed, causing the attack to travel even further and hit the distant assailant before they can act. Overall, Black Alice's dash attack is an extremely potent harassment tool and advantage, the fastest move in her arsenal, while hardly lacking in strength, capable of killing outright given she can land the sweet spot, and still enabling edgeguarding if she lands the weaker sour spot. It is easily her strongest approach tool out of the gate, allowing her to brazenly charge in despite her moveset preferring her at range, which obviously is exactly why you should use it. The paradoxical use case in huge burst range allows Alice to catch her opponent asleep from incredible ranges, even landing a sour spot plenty to remind them of their place and keep them from passive. The move's true fault is in its input, dash attack, keeping it from acting as an effective getting off tool, something Black Alice is sorely lacking. She obviously can't abuse that blazing fast 8-frame startup to escape a juggle, and the move in question is a dash attack. Even if her opponent is able to react and shield the attack, Black Alice's dash attack comes armed with a second property, its inherent mix-up. Landing the sweet spot of the attack will cause her to bounce against her opponent's shield in a manner similar to that of Peach's bomber, dealing similarly high shield damage while leaving herself completely safe and at a distance. An optimal distance for forward tilt, no less. Otherwise, if the Monster Lord opts to land the sour spot, she will cross up her opponent's shield given she lands the sour spot early enough. While not inherently safe, this ambiguous cross-up scenario out of her sour spot allows her to abuse her opponent further on their defense, only bolstered further by Black Alice's harrowing mental stack. While in her Goddess of Chaos form, Dash Attack gains quite a potent property. Not only does it now gain her a staggering 3 seconds of time when destroying a projectile, her wings outstretch as she slams her rear forward, allowing her to hold the move and extend the duration and distance of the attack. On top of extending the sweet spot for a whole 5 frames, the sour spot is extended for 10, allowing the move to remain a threat for a much longer period of time for much further ranges, also giving her plenty more time to eat projectiles thanks to that sweet spot extension. One more thing, she can now dash attack over the ledge if the attack is held, allowing her to harshly butt slam recovering opponents and send them hurtling to their doom. Undoubtedly an incredibly fearsome and unreactable long-range attack option that will typically force them to recover low, where her new and improved forward tilt shines at covering. Aerials. Black Alice, as with her contemporaries, possesses a very frightening and heavy-hitting air game, despite her generally slower air mobility compared to Elias and Adrenaline. Her aerials, although typically on the slower side, generally hit far harder than her grounded normals, covering massive chunks of the stage or hard punishing brazen approaches. Black Alice's aerials are best used in tandem with her grounded normals to keep her opponent submissive, and are ripe for abuse once she has conditioned them properly, or is set up sufficiently with her specials. While slow, Black Alice's aerials are generally her least fair attacks. They are often very safe, linger for incredible amounts of time, cover insane amounts of screen space, deal obscene damage, gain meter, or a mix of the bunch, to make up for their general sluggishness. An airborne Black Alice is often a sign of approaching death, once she has grown tired of her grounded shenanigans and pressure setting. Neutral Air. Renegade wins. Attack type, expensive. Meter cost, 1%, 2 hits. Timer effect, none. Damage, 1.2% hit, plus 2.5% finisher. Kills at 140% ledge. Startup, 10 frames. Activity, 20 frames to 50 frames. Ending, 24 frames. Landing, 11 frames. Black Alice smiles darkly, floating through the air as she holds her hands up to her sides, her ghostly aura chaotically swirling around her body, the intensity and distance of the winds scaling directly with Black Alice's current amount of meter. This is no mere visual effect. The activity and range of the move scaling directly with Black Alice's meter. Initially, the move doesn't last particularly long, only hitting 5 times, and having a bit less range than Palutena's neutral air. Yet, near the max, it has exceptional range, almost 2/3 more than that of even Sephiroth's, while lasting a whole 50 frames for a staggering 20 hits. Black Alice's neutral air is somewhat below average speed combo and neutral tool, capable of dealing incredible damage while stocked with meter, all the while blanketing Black Alice in a fairly safe disjointed bubble of highly active hitbox. It is fairly weak while she is lower on meter, having little overall range, damage, and poor activity for a move of its caliber, although it is still somewhat usable as a combo tool, albeit one that may rapidly drain her meter given she attempts to chain the move together multiple times in succession, as if she were Palutena. The move becomes much more lethal from the halfway point onwards, having far more substantial range, activity, and sheer damage to make up for the heightened meter loss on hit. Black Alice often winning out the risk-reward for the sheer damage potential out of a dental confirm, or even a chain of fairly draining neutral air loops. Although the move is now far riskier to throw out on whiff thanks to the substantially heightened activity, limiting its use in neutral. Overall, Black Alice's neutral air is, as with Forward Tilt, a move that would likely be excessive on any other character, given its ability to outperform even Palutena's horrific nair loops and offer even more damage. Although in this case, the meter drain again balances her out, repeated uses of the move simply draining meter, and thus reducing the move's strength with successive uses, forcing Black Alice to be tactical. She can whiff the move at her leisure, especially so without all too much meter, thanks to the reduced activity at no cost to meter, allowing her to potentially wall off her opponent while pressuring them with her neutral and side specials. And, if the opportunity is right, Black Alice can cash in and use the move to deal some damage, doing so almost risklessly when meterless, and doing so a bit more casually while stocked on meter, assuming she's aiming to reach her Goddess of Chaos form. As with many of her other meter training or non-gaining moves, use of her neutral air is always a practice of restraint. Of course, all that aforementioned restraint is cast aside in her Goddess of Chaos form. Rather than upgrading into an entirely new move, Black Alice simply dumps all of her energy into the same move, swirling bands of sparking holy energy and shadowy dark energy winding rapidly around her form as she performs the move, clearly having no risk of draining meter while remaining fully powered. The move is overall identical to the standard max power form of the move, save some additional hit stun and shield damage, although it hardly needs much more to dominate as an excessively strong long-range damage dealer. Forward air, hot potato. Hit. Attack type, compressive. Meter gain, plus 8% on sweet spot. Timer effect, minus 3 seconds on sweet spot. Damage, sweet spot, 19.8%. Damage, lingering, 8.8%. Kills at, sweet spot, 65%. Ledge. Kills at, lingering, 105%. Ledge. Startup, 20 frames. Activity, sweet spot, 2 frames. Activity, linger, 15 frames. Ending, 20 frames. Landing, 15 frames. Time bomb explosion. Attack type, existential. Meter use, minus 11% on detonation. Timer effect, minus 8 seconds on detonation. Stock regen time, 4 to 17 seconds. 0 to 100% meter. Damage, 19.2%. Kills at, instant kill. Activity, 5 frames. Body distorting, Black Alice briefly assumes a less naked version of her H.R. Geigery 4th form as she pulls both hands back, chuckling in a sinister manner as purple electricity sparks rapidly between her hands, huge amounts of energy forming within her palms. After accumulating sufficient energy, Black Alice will clap her hands together while grinning darkly, a huge horizontal plume of explosive magical energy erupting from her hands with enough force to send her flying backwards a considerable distance, similar to a reversed corn back air. After performing the attack, Black Alice's typical clothes will rematerialize as her various purple tentacles, signature of her 4th form, retract back into her skirt. An egregiously powerful attack, Black Alice's forward air easily makes up for its slow startup with a ridiculous power, movement utility, and an unfairly long-lasting lingering hitbox. Plus, a little bonus given she lands the sweet spot. Overall, Black Alice's forward air is an exceptionally powerful move tailored for use in advantage and neutral, typically too slow to haphazardly throw about in disadvantage despite the potential burst movement the move provides. However, this burst of movement is what makes it so powerful in neutral. The sheer safety, huge killing lingering hitbox, and immense shield damage of the move allowing her to truly cripple her opponent for playing defensively, something that they are often forced to do once she has set up her pressure applying specials. Furthermore, forward air unfairly builds meter on hit, despite its appearance as an almighty meter burning move. The sadistic monster lord gladly disobeying her own conventions to make up for the attack's dramatic startup lag. All of these bonuses truly start to add up in the face of the attack's horrendous startup, and even then, the attack has one more trick up its sleeve. If Black Alice manages to strike her opponent with the Almighty's sweet spot, given they even survive the attack's insane strength, sparking purple energy will zap and flicker around her body for 6 seconds afterwards, slowly intensifying until culminating in a huge electrified purple explosion, unavoidably instant killing her opponent, while draining 11% meter from Black Alice as recompense, whether she has the meter or not. This horrifying property of the move truly pushes it over the edge, throwing her opponent into 6 seconds of panic, unless they can hit her, where the electricity disperses and frees them from the move. While they are given plenty of time to retaliate and remove the effect, even hitting their projectiles sufficing, a good Black Alice player can often make this easier said than done, especially with the assistance of Tea Party Invitation or a nearby comet to keep her opponent locked down. Devilish Cascade even filling a role in swatting away those pesky projectiles while gaining some meter. In essence, if Black Alice lands a forward air sweet spot, 6 seconds of unadulterated sadism await. Of course, despite easily being one of the scariest moves in her entire kit, Black Alice's forward air is far from infallible. While annoyingly safe on whiff and entirely safe on shield, the attack possesses very reactable startup for an aerial and can be very easily whiff punished if attacked if reacted to in time. Just mind the lingering hitbox, as it often creates an immense illusion of false safety that the monster lord can easily use to her advantage. Back air, strumming shackles, attack type, compressive, meter gain, 6% on hit, timer effect, minus 2 seconds on hit, damage, sweet spot, 18.3%, damage, lingering, 9.3%, kills at, sweet spot, 50%, diagonal spike, kills at, lingering, 190%, ledge, startup, 18 frames, activity, sweet spot, 3 frames, activity, lingering, 6 frames, ending, 32 frames, landing, 14 frames. Black Alice again assumes her fourth form as she winds her arm back, the length of her arm morphing into a huge purple tentacle as she lashes it diagonally downwards behind herself, covering a gigantic diagonal space behind and beneath her at a 40-degree angle. laughing madly or screaming for her opponent to die all the while, both fairly distinct sounds among her kit, oddly enough. Her fourth form is easily her most brutal and unhinged form, after all. In essence, back air is the ultimate fuck-off move. Despite being very slow, almost as slow as her forward air, it possesses absolutely ridiculous coverage, essentially an Elias forward air tilted 40 degrees behind herself, and brutally spikes whomever it directly strikes. Sending them hurtling diagonally downwards into the blast zone. And of course, if she fails to land the sweet spot, she keeps the tentacles extended for a few frames, leaving behind an infuriating semi-spiking lingering hitbox. Despite these incredible upsides and the move's horrific coverage, back air is a fairly niche move thanks to its huge all-round lag, generally even unsafe on shield without proper spacing thanks to the sheer end lag. In all, that makes back air fairly poor for neutral outside of checking her opponent for space. While where back air truly shines is at the ledge. If Black Alice knocks her opponent off stage, she can immediately threaten almost any low recovery by tossing out a back air, or even better, appear as if she were about to, only to cancel the move and redirect a comet to catch a high recovery. Given enough conditioning, Black Alice can essentially scare her opponent into always recovering high, possibly allowing her to land a fearsome up air or forward air. The move also has a fair amount of use on stage, given Black Alice has set up properly. Tea Party Invitation in particular meshing well with the move thanks to its ability to keep opponents passive, therefore allowing Alice much more liberty to throw out huge back airs uncontested. Back air, Goddess of Chaos, Wings of Paradise and Purgatory. Attack type, Compressive. Form loss delay, +1 second on hit. Timer effect, -51 seconds on hit. Damage, 16%. Kills at 90% ledge. Startup, 11 frames. Activity, 3 frames. Ending, 25 frames. Landing, 12 frames. As Elias and Adramelech before her, the Goddess of Chaos takes up the torch of possessing Corrin back airs, completing the trifecta with the most busted rendition of the attack yet. Black Alice giggles as she flourishes her wings out from behind herself, crackling holy and dark energies swirling around the respective wing as her opponent is struck with a burst of chaotic energy on hit, launching them outwards with obscene hit stun and base knockback. While slower than Ilias's rendition of the attack, and not as obscenely damaging as Adramelech's, Black Alice's spin on the Corrin back air is as mighty as ever, killing earlier than her contemporaries while having a lot of hit stun, so much so that she can likely combo out of the move if it weren't for the burst of forward momentum, which is useful in and of itself, the snappy and extreme momentum change allowing her ample ability to vary her aerial movement, especially so when compounded with all the jumps her Goddess of Chaos form is granted in the air. This obviously helps with the attack's safety as well, keeping Black Alice safe on whiff thanks to the momentum, and stupefying safe on shield thanks to the huge shield stun. The attack is easily plus on shield, the pushback the only thing saving the attack from becoming a shield-breaking tool. Overall, Black Alice trades sheer range and strength from her usual back air for some more finesse in her Goddess of Chaos form, still offering up ample strength and a world of utility in aerial no, and a world of utility in return for what was lost. The speed of the attack, only beat by her neutral air as her fastest aerial, allows her to contest opponents mid-air far easier than she could before, ignoring the huge buffs neutral air is given at such a time. The momentum-altering abilities of the attack are on full display here, allowing Black Alice to aggressively chase down opponents with the momentum, mix up her aerial movement, or otherwise keep herself supremely safe at all times. Up air. Tsukishimoto. Attack type. Existential. Meter burn cost 35%. Timer effect. Minus 20 seconds on hit. Meter burn. Stock regen time 20 seconds. Damage 15.4%. Damage held 31.3%. Kills at 80% off top. Kills at held. Instant kill. Startup 16 frames. Startup held 24 frames. Activity 5 frames. Ending 29 frames. Landing 14 frames. Black Alice winds her arm back, dark energy surrounding her arm and forming into the shape of a wicked sharp katana, the legendary Tsukishimoto, before she violently slashes above herself from front to back, shadowy dark energy leading her blade. Naturally, Black Alice's up air is a colossal move, the long katana covering a massive space from her front to back, reminiscent of Corrin or Robin's up air, nearly identical in frame data to Elias's fearsome Arc of Eden, only with less end lag and more reasonable landing lag. While slow to start, Black Alice's up air is a horrific move that dominates the entire airspace, dealing very high damage and knockback. The eruption of dark energy on hit providing additional hit stun for seemingly impossible low percent ladders, despite the huge base knockback and high landing lag. This is exacerbated greatly in Black Alice's Goddess of Chaos form, her multiple jumps allowing her to freely ladder her opponents at lower percentages and rack up egregious damage, given she can land the slow aerial in the first place. This pairs excellently with the attack's excessive hitbox, the obscene horizontal range on either side of Black Alice's body, allowing her to throw out landing up airs in neutral to fish for confirms. Although she cannot do so carelessly, thanks to the slow startup and punishable landing lag. This landing lag makes the move fairly unsafe on shield as well, sharply in contrast with several of her other aggressive neutral tools, meaning she must restrain herself from brazenly tossing such a mighty move around, lest she eats massive damage courtesy of her poor disadvantaged state. Obviously that isn't all. Black Alice may charge the move for an additional 8 frames and 35 meter, the blade distorting and wavering in her hand as it accumulates chaotic energy, the following swing tearing through the fabric of space-time and striking with a colossal galactic rift, instant killing whomever is unfortunate enough to eat the brunt of her attacks. Despite the seemingly unusable speed, this is easily one of Black Alice's strongest instant kills, possessing a fixed stock regeneration in time, a gigantic timer loss, and ludicrous damage, giving her a consistent and set regeneration time to play and plan around. Consequently, due to the slow speed, this instant kill requires the most setup to land, her often having to commit several resources to taking her opponent's mind off the attack, a distracting comet or neutral special orbs keeping her opponent busy and unaware. Of course, gone is the large cost of goddess of chaos. In, of course, gone is the large meter cost in goddess of chaos form. Throughout the timeline shattering swings to your heart's content, and fish for a true instant kill. Down air, lecherous crescendo. Attack type, expansive. Meter use, 1%. 10 frames of activity. Timer effect, none. Damage, sweet spot, 5.4% plus 10.8%. Damage lingering, 5%. Kills at, sweet spot, 70%. Spikes. Kills at, lingering, 140%. Ledge. Start up, 15 frames. Activity, sweet spot, 2 frames / 3 frames. Activity, lingering, 60 frames. Ending, 0 frames. Landing, 11 frames. Black Alice flips herself upside down in the air, staring down at her opponent with her usual wide-eyed grin as she chops her arm horizontally underneath herself, dark magic leading her palm as she does so, leaving her dark energy-infused palm extended out to her side for a significant amount of time afterwards. While slow as usual, Black Alice's down air is a powerful and satisfying two-hitting spike. The initial swing blasting her opponent with a dark energy and leaving them in place for the follow-through, which viciously spikes them with a tremendously easy-to-land hitbox. Before she trails her arm far out to her side for an incredibly long amount of time, remaining before her as an averagely powerful semi-spiking lingering hitbox, which lingers for an entire 60 frames, entirely safe on shield while dealing a decent amount of shield damage, far more than one might expect given the general weakness of the lingering hitbox. Of course, the spike is entirely untechable, given Black Alice lands the first hit. No escape. As expected for an aerial of hers, Black Alice's down air is an incredibly potent and frightening move. The sheer size and ease of the powerful spike allowing potent off-stage kills, while the insane long-lasting lingering hitbox allows her to further gimp recovering opponents, or harass them from on-stage with an incredibly safe poke. While immensely committal, thanks to the entire 60 frames of activity, the attack has literally no end lag, potentially allowing for some incredibly weird and telegraphed combos out of a late lingering hitbox, but otherwise rarely comes into play thanks to the sheer length of time she's locked into the attack. Do not whiff this. Or do, if you have a comet frozen. It's always worth spending some meter to cancel that lag outright by redirecting the thing and catch your opponent off guard. Black Alice can also occasionally get away with whiffing the attack if her opponent is in front of her, due to how far she extends her arm, potentially beating out shorter ranged moves. Something else to note about Black Alice's down air is its meter drain. While not particularly significant, she loses 1% meter for every 10 frames of activity, actively burning her bars to keep the magic upon her palm active. This isn't particularly damning, especially since she'll only burn 6.6% meter at most, although it is worth considering if you plan on diving off stage with an obnoxious lingering hitbox every time you smack your opponent over the edge. Unlike many of her moves, Black Alice's down air actually has a significant penalty if she runs out of meter midway. Her arm loses its hitbox. Black Alice giggling as if disappointed in her player, as whatever remaining activity is essentially swapped for Endalag. Ouch. Now, as for the Goddess of Chaos, there is no need to burn a valuable redshift on such an insubstantial mistake. With the help of those wings, she can simply jump out of the attack at any time, weightily soaring upwards with substantially more jump height than usual. Of course, it isn't that simple. If it were, down air would easily dominate the air and force her to constantly throw out lingering hitboxes. The actual jump canceling animation lasts for 15 frames, and while somewhat speedy for a cancel, is a notable amount of time she cannot act for. Also, of course, you can't do this if you're out of air jumps, so mind you, or you'll just end up down airing yourself to death off stage. Uniquely enough, this jump cancel property grants down air an incredibly useful niche. While the action is much slower than a regular jump, Black Alice's down air jump cancel provides her a far higher jump than normal, much more comparable to Kazuya's double jump than that of her standard. This means that at any time, Black Alice can perform a down air and immediately jump cancel it for a colossal height boost, at the cost of the period of inactivity. This may open up a few new combo routes in certain cases, like up throw to up air. Smashes. Forward smash. Monster Lord's Cruelty. Attack type. Compressive. Meter gain. 15%. 30% fully charged on hit. Timer effect. -3 uncharged. 11 seconds. Timer effect. -3 seconds on hit. -11 seconds on hit fully charged. Damage.